We have seen the various goals and targets from the global perspective. This presentation, we are going to discuss about information and communication policy from the national perspective. As we discussed in the earlier presentation about policy documents are always a kind of guidelines that set the roadmap for couple of years, for next couple of years or a decade. And most governments, they have a policy, as we noted in the global perspective. 168 countries are having a national policy towards information and communication technology. India is one among that country having a very established policy document for achieving certain targets, certain goals in the areas of telecommunication and information communication technology. We have a strong track record of having multiple policy documents, frequent changes in the policy framework due to the technological developments, its application side and ramification and global developments in this area. The Government of India always changes the revamp and adding a new policy perspectives in every frequent intervals. There are many state governments having their own policy related to the ICT, but in this presentation we are talking about a national perspective from the Government of India's policy documents. The first national telecom policy of India was introduced in 1994, because immediately after the policy document in 1994, the internet was introduced in 1995, August 15th by VSNL with a Sansar Nigam Limited. The first policy, the first ICT policy is a very generic in nature. It went along with the Government of India's plan of generic government policy towards the economic liberalization. Because 90 to 95, Government of India liberalized major market economy to the private players. As part of that larger goal, they introduced the provision for private players and providing competition among the private players in the areas of telecommunication and introduced the private players in the market. That was a major aim of national policy of 1994. They haven't talked much about ICT, but basically they want to introduce a telecommunication market to the private players. That was a policy of 1994. Subsequently, internet was introduced in August 1995, and 1 month before, the mobile connectivity was introduced in India, July 1995. And over the period of 5 years, a lot of growth happened in the internet penetration, mobile penetration. Then new telecom policy of 1999 got introduced. Basically, that new policy of 1999, telecom policy of 1999, aimed at boosting the number of telephone connections as well as the growth of mobile segment. Since 5 years back, it got introduced and it covered the basic ground, it covered a major number of connectivity. So they want to enhance the connectivity in terms of providing better infrastructure. So the aim was to provide more number of telephone connection, because at that point of time the internet facility was available through dial-up. The speed was very low, and mobile was introduced in 95, but mobile segment also in very nascent stage. The government wants to increase the connections in the both the level. So that was a primary aim of new telecom policy of 1999. This policy covered wide variety of segments of telecommunication sector. So in practical terms, we can consider the new telecom policy of 1999 as a first ICT policy of India, ICT policy of Government of India. Then in 2004 came broadband policy. In 1994, it introduced a private sector. In 1999, it added extra strength for adding extra strength in infrastructure development. Then came in a broadband policy of 2004. This policy aimed to putting a major focus on setting the stage for further penetration of broadband diffusion and its technology in the various segments of the society. Accordingly, Government of India introduced a flagship program called BharatNet. It's a major government initiative to increase the broadband penetration in rural India has been initiated in 2004. This is the first time Government of India acknowledged that the rural and urban divide existing in internet and mobile connectivity. So that's got reflected in a broadband policy of 2004. So that's one of the reasons why the BharatNet was targeting providing better connectivity to the rural segment. Then came National Telecom Policy 2012. The main aim of National Telecom Policy of 2012 aiming towards empower an inclusive knowledge based society, and main mission of new policy 2012 was making affordable and effective communication for all the citizens. Special focus on providing broadband connection to the rural and remote areas, making the connection for open and non-discriminatory and technology neutral path towards network society. In the broadband policy of 2004, government acknowledged the divide between rural and urban. In telecom policy 2012, more specific details are given with regard to digital divide, with regard to inclusive society, with regard to providing equality, affordability. There is a strong focus in the National Telecom Policy 2012. It acknowledges the severity of the digital divide, and it acknowledges the severity of inequality between multiple segments, various segments, particularly vulnerable and marginalized sections of the society. That was a focus we have discussed in detail in a global perspective. Though in 2018-19 the ITO talked about inclusive society, of course it's not a new concept, but in the Indian government started focusing on digital divide in 2004 broadband policy as well as in details in National Telecom Policy 2012. Then came 2018 National Digital Communication Policy. We will take up that policy in detail in the later slides. Before that, we will understand briefly about what is the penetration level, how internet got introduced, and what are the level of penetration over the last 25 years of internet history in India. 94 national new telecom policy gave a scope for private players. 95 August internet got introduced. At the end of 95, we got around 0.03% of penetration in India. That's approximately 0.29 million users. In 96, it got into 0.05% over the period. In 2000, the level of penetration is 0.53. The first 5 years, we faced a lot of hardship in reaching the large number of audience, particularly the internet connectivity, infrastructure were very expensive. That affordability might have been the major impeding factor for mass penetration of internet. Subsequent years, particularly 2005, 2000 it was 0.53, in 2005 it gone to the 2.39, almost 5 times we got into that. 2000 it was around 5.59 million internet users. By 2005 we got 27.4 million internet users. That's roughly 2.39%. By 2010 we got the penetration level, we have reached 7.5%, almost 3 times. 2000 to 2005 5 times, 2005 to 2010 got into the 3 times, 7.5. That approximately resulting in 92.5%, 92.5 million internet users by 2010. By 2014, it got doubled. 2010 it's at 7.5. In 2014, it's 18%. 18% of population were having internet connectivity. Approximately needed 233 million users by 2014. And 2019, we got into the 44%, almost 2.5 times of multiplication of internet users, and nearly about 604 million internet users by 2019, 44% of penetration and 604 million users. In this year, in 2020, it's nearly about 680 million users and 51%, we have crossed 50%, 51% of the Indian population are connected to the internet. We may not be able to divide the population in having and have-nots, but it's a kind of digital inequality. There is a variation in the level of access because socio-economic conditions that makes the access or doesn't have access, that creates kind of inequality there. So, if you look at the digital divide in a theoretical framework, we can divide into multiple levels. The digital divide encompasses differences in both access, in access between haves and have-nots. That's the first level of digital divide. Divide is a binary division, having access, does not have access. In the second level of digital divide, we are talking about usage of computers and internet between industrialized country and developing countries. That's global divide. The last global presentation, global ICT policy presentation, we have seen the difference in the developed countries, developing countries and least developed countries, 57% and 47% and 9.1%. We have seen various huge difference in terms of internet penetration among the household and individual internet connectivity. This is, we can say, the global divide. Under the second level divide, we can see the various socio-economic groups within the country also having a kind of division, having inequality in terms of access to internet. That's we can call this a social divide. The third level of divide under the second level digital divide is different kinds of users with regard to their political engagement on the internet. Many countries adopt different policy towards providing connectivity at different level, the stringent restriction, moderate restriction, open access. So, that divide we can call as a democratic divide. So, primarily we can divide the digital divide into first level divide that talks about having access. The second level, the usage. Within the usage level, we can have a global divide, social divide and democratic divide. If you look at the history of digital divide analysis over the period of last 25 years, 1995 to 2000, the majority of the discussion happened around the physical access to ICT infrastructure. Access, that's a rude definition of digital divide, having access, doesn't have access. Between 2000 to 2005, the digital divide discussion focused, shifted focus towards competency and skills dominated the discussion. Reason is, by the first 10 years, the developed countries able to reach a mass level of internet users. So, the digital divide, the gap between haves and have-nots started narrowing in the developed countries. So, the major discussion started coming towards competency and skills. In the last one decade, the focus of digital divide is being shifted towards relevance and usage of ICT for public as well as private purposes, private usage. So, that is more towards the talking about equality. So, in initial level, it is a binary division, access, then competency, skills, and later talking about usage, relevance of ICT for public and private purposes. Yet another division has happened in the discourse of digital inequality over the period of time. That is a horizontal versus vertical perspective of inequalities. Horizontal level is a kind of quantitative level. Quantity means the level of connectivity, speed. In the global ICT policy, we talked about the current level of bandwidth is 117 kilobits per second, but in developed countries it's 189, in a developing countries it's 91 kilobits per second, but the ICT policy of ITU is aiming to make it 10 megabytes per second by 2023. That's horizontal, the quantum of internet connectivity between the different countries and between different communities within the country. That's talking about a horizontal level. Vertical level is talking about competency and skills. What level of competency and what level of skills the population is having with regard to ICT and telecommunication, but in one of the ICT policy of global perspective, aiming to make 40% of internet users having advanced skills. So that also we have division, horizontal versus vertical divisions, digital divide. We come to the specific areas of Indian government of India's National Digital Communication Policy 2018. Last policy was about a new National Telecom Policy 2012. It talked about inclusive society. In 2018 policy is more or less tuned towards a global policy. There are 6 areas in which the National Communication Policy 2018 aiming to achieve by 2022. ITU policy and International Telecommunication Policy talked about 2023. But our national policy is aiming towards to achieve all these parameters by 2022. There are 6 major areas. 1, providing broadband for all and creating 4 million additional jobs in the digital communication sector by 2022, and enhancing the contribution of digital communication sector to 8% of India's GDP from 6% of 2017. Increase the GDP contribution from ICT sector, and propelling India to the top 50 nations in the ICT development index of ITU from the 134 position in 2017. We were in 134 in 2017. We are aiming to make it top 50 nations by 2022, and enhancing the India's contribution to the global value chains and ensuring the digital sovereignty. These are 6 major areas of National Digital Communication Policy 2018. Primarily are the latest policy of Government of India talking about taking advantage of new technologies, make it as accessible to all and everyone, and making it equitably affordable to all the sections of the society, and making it secure the internet users from against existing as well as emerging threats. It's a continuation of 2012 policy, inclusive society, inclusive network society, making the internet connection, broadband connection affordable, accessible to all the sections of the society. Communication infrastructure supports the entire population, whose demographic profile vary widely across various indicators, like variation in terms of literacy, variation in terms of economic conditions, variation in terms of the geographical location, urban or rural sector. The policy is the Indian government's policy of ICT aiming towards universal coverage rather than the revenue maximization. So that's a primary target of the policy. And more specifically, it's a continuation of 2012 policy of inclusive network society. 2018 policy also reiterating that data economy and digital technologies and services are no longer privilege of elite sections, but they have indeed evolved into widespread instrument. It's the internet access, and it empowered the individuals, and nearly with the help of mobile penetration, and mobile penetration is close to 90% and internet penetration is close to 51%. Half of the Indian populations having access, and they can utilize the resources for their betterment. That's what being emphasized by this policy of Government of India. It has been broadly estimated in this document, is broadly estimating that a 10% increase in broadband penetration in a country could potentially lead to an over 1% increase in GDP. That's a very conservative estimate, and many people are believing that more the penetration, more the contribution to GDP. But now, overall, the very conservative estimation is 10% increase in broadband penetration could result in 1% increase of contribution to the GDP from the telecom sector. Currently, the policies document states that India has approximately 1.5 million kilometers of OFC, optical fiber cable. That's a very massive infrastructure has been created, and the large number of mobile towers are connected to the fiber connectivity. That provides scope for better broadband connection to the various sections of the society. And the policy again reiterates that it's necessary to explore and utilize the opportunities of the new generation of technology like 5G and other pioneering network access technologies. So, that makes the Government of India's target of providing penetration of more broadband connection to many sections of society by 2022. And another target of National Digital Communication Policy is aiming to connect 6 lakhs of villages to broadband through flagship internet initiative called BharatNet. As we discussed in the 2004 broadband telecom policy, the BharatNet was introduced as part of the broadband policy 2004, and the continuation of that project is a Government of India's project that taking the broadband to the 6 lakh villages in order to take the benefit of telecommunication and information communication technology. And more specifically, this policy seeks to promote and protect fair competition across the communication digital economy sector. The primary aim is to protect the industry and making it clear that environment gives a lot of benefits to the consumer. Consumer welfare has to be protected, because the basic belief that if the private competition come into the telecom sector, automatically the more competition will come. More competition means the players will bring the best technology, they will provide the best services to the consumer. Consumer become the king. So, the competition brings better quality and reduce cost. That is what happening the last couple of years, and the data has become affordable to the many section of the society. So, that is the aim of one of the policy, make it more fair competition across a different sector. And the importance of continued improvement in a regulatory framework of attracting investment and ensuring fair competition to serve the needs of the citizen. That is the main thing. In order to sustain the telecommunication sector, the proper investment, continued investment, enhanced investment is required in that sector. Achieving these goals would require that the key stakeholders, namely center, state, local governments, agencies, telecom service providers, internet service providers, infrastructure providers, handset and equipment manufacturers, academic community, innovators and startups, all sector, all the stakeholders have to come together to forge a partnership to deliver this national policy and its missions. And if you look at all the major factors of national digital communication policy, is exactly matching with the International Telecom Union's goals of growth, inclusiveness, sustainability, innovation and partnership. Primarily, this Indian Government of India's National Digital Communication Policy talking about 3 major missions. One is Connect India, second Propel India, and third is Secure India. Connect India means under the Connect India mission of National Digital Communication Policy, it wants to provide universal broadband connectivity at the rate of 50 megabits per second to every citizen by 2022. The International Telecommunication Policy is providing 60% of household and 70% individuals and making a broadband connection 10 megabits per second. We are providing a little higher range of connectivity to all the individuals and providing 1 gigabytes per second connectivity to all Gram Panchayats of India by 2020 and by 10 gigabytes per second by 2022. Enabling 100 Mbps broadband on demand to all the key development sectors including education institution by 2022. Enabling fixed line broadband access to 50% of households, and ITU is aiming to achieve 60%. Achieve unique mobile subscriber density by 55% by 2020, 65% by 2022. This is a very broad aim to connect India. It is matching with the growth and inclusiveness of ITU's ICT policy. Second mission of National Digital Communication Policy is Propel India. It is attracting investment of close to $100 billion in the digital communication sector by 2022 and increasing India's contribution to the global value chain in the next couple of years. and creation of innovation-led startups in the digital communication sector, creation of globally recognized IPRs, intellectual property rights in Indian context, development of standard essential patents in the field of digital communication technology, and train and providing skill set to 1 million manpower to build new age skills. That's one of the global context also. 40% of the internet users should have advanced ICT skills. So that's one of the goal of ICT of global context. More or less government of India is talking about 1 million manpower of building new skills. Expand the ecosystem to 5 billion connected devices. And the last segment of national digital communication policy is talking about secure India, providing more safety and security to the internet connectivity, internet sector, internet infrastructure, providing necessary efforts to secure and providing safety to all the internet users, all the stakeholders of internet segment. If you look at the national telecommunication policy of 2018, closely matching with the international ICT policy, Connect India, Propel India, Secure India is matching with the ITU's growth, inclusiveness, sustainability, innovation and partnership. Hopefully both the presentations about ICT from the global perspective and national perspective might have given you the groundwork for you to understand that at what level internationally and nationally the government plans wants to achieve by 2022 or 2023. In that way, indirectly, next 7 years after 2023, these infrastructure, this connectivity will help to achieve remaining 17 goals and 167 targets of sustainable development goals by 2030. Thank you.